I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, February 28th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, real data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
Looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean, we see a gale in the northern Gulf of Alaska producing 26-foot seas, but more importantly, a broad gale trying to develop off of Kamchatka here with seas in the 35-foot range and forecast to build and just barely hang south of the Aleutians, offering potential for some semi-real swell in the days ahead. Let's get into the details. We'll start off looking at jet stream level winds. These winds of about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when those gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, sort of a dip in the jet, just like what we have here. And what that does is help support a counterclockwise flow aloft and down at the ocean surface. That is the hallmark of low pressure. And of course, low pressure, if it's deep enough, generates winds. Winds, if they're strong enough, generate seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, turn into swell. Swell and hitch or beach turns into surf. All right, so the jet is semi-split, if not completely split, off Japan, but it comes together for a nanosecond as it approaches the dateline here. You notice wind speeds jump up to 180, 190 knots, maybe almost 200 knots right in there, and that's giving this little area here the ability to support gale development. But then you notice the jet ridges well to the north into the Bering Sea, then falls south again and forms another tiny little trough here in the northern Gulf of Alaska, and that is also supporting some sort of gale development. Then the jet ridges again, pushing into the U.S., into Canada, actually. It's where these ridges are, it does the exact opposite of the trough. That creates a clockwise flow, and that is the hallmark of high pressure, and that does not a whole lot for generating surf. All right, so let's put this into motion, see what we're up for. Now, as we get into Monday, the jet starts racing across the Bering Sea. Most of the energy, it appears from this, will be confined to the Bering Sea, but we know that some of it will actually fall south of the Aleutians. And then the trough here off Canada, very pinched, not doing a whole lot. Trying to push off of California as we get into Tuesday, maybe offering some hope, while the jet, look at the split here. The whole way across the North Pacific on the Aleutian Islands, with a secondary flow running down around 25 north the whole way across the Pacific and into Baja. In between, high pressure is the expected result, other than a little low, maybe only an upper level low, not even down at the surface off of Point Conception as we get into Tuesday. Now, as we get into Wednesday, things get a little bit more interesting. The amplitude of the jet just goes way up into the Bering Sea, but that opens the opportunity for it to all fall south also. If it rises, it has to go south somewhere, and it sets up a nice broad trough in the Gulf of Alaska, offering potential for gale development there. That continues into Thursday. You can see it right here. If that doesn't support a counterclockwise circulation aloft, I don't know what would. And maybe pushing some weather into at least the Pacific Northwest and down into California with a little bit of luck. And that then the front pushes through, it looks like on Friday night into Saturday morning. The jet looks very weak after that. Still some sort of a trough. But notice the wind speed's very weak on Saturday in the northern Gulf. And the jet, well split, a little bit of energy trying to build as we get into Sunday and into, here we are, a week out. Still some sort of a trough in the Gulf of Alaska. Split point, just a little bit west of the dateline there we'd see, and high pressure in between. So at least there is a little bit of hope. So next up, we're looking at surface level pressure, surface level winds. What's the effect of the jet? What effect does the jet stream have on what's going on down at the ocean surface? Because that's what matters. Winds on the ocean is all that matters. The wind speed, the fetch, that scoops up or imparts energy actually into the ocean, and that's what, of course, makes seas and swell. All right, so our storm in the Bering Sea. Sunday, 18Z, that's actually about 10 a.m. Pacific time, so we're actually looking back in time here. 45, 50, 55 knot winds, barely in the Pacific Ocean. Notice the Aleutians are right there, and you have to have fetch unobstructed by land. So there is some development going on. Now, as we get into Sunday night, notice the bulk of this fetch is north of the Aleutian Islands. It's just this little sliver here, 45, 40 knot winds south of the Aleutians. That's what's interesting. More of the same as we get into Monday. Tiny little area right here of 45 knot winds, all of it aimed off due east. So I'm not going to say it's bypassing Hawaii, but it certainly is not optimal for the Hawaiian Islands. Then we get into Tuesday, and then things start getting interesting. Remember, the jet starts pushing north and then falling south, and you can see it right here. 35, 40 knot fetch building over the northern Gulf of Alaska. Certainly going to get some traction if it develops. And look, covering a pretty decent area as we get into Wednesday and then fading out Thursday. Nice cold front here along the Pacific Northwest, pushing inland on Thursday night. Keeping our eyes here, another system off the Kuril Islands, but notice all the arrows aimed off to the northeast. Probably nothing pushing at us, but then another gale starts developing in the northern Gulf with supposedly 50 knot winds over a tiny area Friday night into Saturday, then fading out to 35 knots. So potential for swell development and also some weather, maybe. That's sort of unfortunate. We'd rather have the swell and not the rain, or the rain and not the swell, but maybe we're going to get both at the same time. Anyway, we're into Sunday night. Things start moderating out. Also notice high pressure, 1040 millibars here north of Hawaii, driving strong trades, but we'll get into that in a minute. All right, so what's the effect of these winds on the ocean surface? Well, 30, 32, 34, 35-foot seas south of the Aleutian Islands today, building this evening to 40, maybe 2 feet. But notice the Aleutians are right here, and the Great Circle Path is at best a straight line east. So it's really only maybe the 40-foot seas right here and this area down here that'll get clear of the Aleutian Islands, maybe 51 north. Yeah, so right about there. This stuff tucked up more here, it's going to just slam into the Aleutians right over here, and we won't see anything from it. But seas build as we get into Monday. There's 40-foot seas still clear of the Aleutians, aimed at the U.S. West Coast and Pacific Northwest. They make it, and nothing counts here north of the Aleutians. And we get down to 33-foot seas as we get into Tuesday morning. But then we know the gale's supposed to build, or at least in coverage, 33-foot seas. Anything 30 feet free and clear in the Gulf is a good deal. We'll take it Wednesday. And then falling south. Now notice this is pretty much in north swell territory. It's not optimal. Certainly not for Southern California, even Northern California. But you take what you can get. At least there are seas above 20 feet, so you'll get more than a 13-second period swell, and that's good, assuming this all plays out as expected. As we get into Friday, things mellow out, but here comes the next one right behind it. Small, but pretty decent. 36-foot seas there. Do we get anything more? No, that's about it. And then that one fades out, so it looks like potentially swell for later in the week for California and Hawaii, and then into the weekend, with luck, assuming all the stars align. A quick look at winds, not so much for wind swell production, though that certainly is a byproduct, but just actually trying to see if there'll be anything that'll calm down enough to let whatever swell is generated come through and not be completely massacred in the process. Earlier this week, strong 1046 millibar high, locked down the Gulf of Alaska. We put something out on Instagram about that, only because it was interesting, because it was so incredibly strong and so incredibly bulletproof. Right now, 1034 millibar high, building to 1042 millibars north of Hawaii. Still pretty strong, but not stopping low pressure from circulating in the northern Gulf. But see the high, what happens is all the low pressure activity will go north of the high, because that's where the jet stream is going. The jet stream drives all this. That's why we focus on the jet stream so much. Anyway, so where are we? We're into Monday morning. Light winds along the California coast. Strong trades, 20 knots, pushing over the Hawaiian Islands. Tuesday morning, still pretty light, maybe a south wind flow. Here's that upper level low off of Point Conception, making for a southerly flow. Strong trades continue for the Hawaiian Islands. As we get into Wednesday, same sort of deal. Light winds, California, trades backing off for the Hawaiian Islands. Thursday, here comes the front. South winds start developing. Trades east, northeast for the Hawaiian Islands, but lightening up at least a little bit. You can get the sense that here comes more high pressure. South winds into northern California, pretty strong, pushing down to into maybe not even the Bay Area on Friday. 15 knots, something like that. I mean, that's not too much of an event. Trades continue for Hawaii, but backed off some. Lighter winds supposedly on Saturday morning, trending south, north of the Bay Area, and north, south of the Bay Area. And here comes the next front as we get into Sunday. Will it make it into the coast? Maybe, but not on Sunday at least. Trades trying to build for Hawaii. Another bulletproof 1040 millibar high north of Hawaii. And here we are 180 hours out. So there looks like there might be windows of opportunity. This model tends to understate the effects of local winds. So oftentimes when it looks like it's very light, when you get into the high res, closer in models, you'll find out the winds are forecast to be more than what this suggests. So take all this with a grain of salt. All right, precipitation. Let's go take a look. And we're just looking at California. California desperately needs some water. We're into, where are we? Tuesday, nothing. Wednesday, nothing. Thursday evening, nothing. Friday, tantalizingly close. Cape Mendocino starting to get something. Trying to push down into the Bay Area. Friday night, it makes it to at least, we'll say, Monterey Bay and dissolves with a dusting of snow for Tahoe. And that's about it. That's unfortunate. And then here comes the next one in on Sunday evening. Sort of looks like the same scenario, falling apart as it gets close. We'll have to see. It's a week out. Don't know what's going to happen. And there's our 1040 millibar high. All right, let's move on. Snow forecast for Squall Valley. Next to nothing. This goes out 10 days too. What's that? Maybe an inch. Snow levels. Here's the base of Squall. You have to be in the white to be at freezing. So snow level about 8,000 feet. This is the top of Squall, so midway. But no snow to be had. So what's this mean? Probably pretty slushy during the day, down low, and bulletproof up top. And continuing on that pattern for at least a week, and then possibly getting colder with some minor. I mean, we need feet of snow, not an inch or two. Let's go take a quick look just down south. Mammoth, the same deal, maybe 2 inches, something like that. Snow level, freezing level here is the base of Mammoth at 8,000 feet, so above freezing at times, but not the whole way to the top at any point in time. So not as bad a situation there just due to their elevation. All right, what's going on long term with the Madden-Julian Oscillation and, of course, the El Nino Southern Oscillation currently in the La Nina phase? We'll start by looking at winds on the equator. This is the East Pacific here. This is the West Pacific. Here's the equator. The international date line right there. That is New Guinea there. We're just looking at the arrows. The colors are water temperatures. The arrows are 5-day average. They show the direction. The longer the arrow, the stronger the wind. So pretty strong easterly winds in the East Pacific, continuing over the Central Pacific, and also moderately strong over what we call the Kelvin wave generation area, the West Pacific, when the active phase, the MJO has 2 phases, inactive and active. The active phase is the one we're interested in because what it does, it acts like low pressure. Well, it is low pressure effectively when it moves over the West Pacific. Oh, and the MJO moves from west to east around the planet, first in the active phase, then in the inactive phase. So when the active phase moves over the West Pacific, it can reduce trade wind speeds or out and out reverse them, and that in turn imparts heat energy up into the atmosphere. because low pressure sort of acts as a chimney, allows heat energy to rise in the atmosphere. That can in turn get sucked up into the jet stream. That energizes the jet stream. That in turn feeds the storm track, and that's what we want. Also, as the active phase moves its way across the Pacific, it drags precipitation with it and can enhance the potential for precipitation in the hemisphere north and south of the equator. So when 120 west, that's where California is. So when the active phase moves south of California, that can improve the chances for precipitation in California. All right, but this is actual wind speeds. It is the anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. And though the winds are pretty strong out of the east and the East Pacific, look at the arrows. Yeah, there's still an easterly component, so they're a little bit stronger than normal, but not unusually strong for this time of year. Same thing over the Central Pacific. Now in the all-important Kelvin wave generation area, yeah, these east winds are still, we'll say, moderate above normal for this time of year. So none of this situation suggests the active phase of the MJO is in control, or at least if it is there, it's not doing anything to positively impact the trade wind pattern or positively allow for the transfer of energy into the jet stream. No big surprise, this is typical of La Nina. Next up, the forecast for the week. All right, so this is the whole planet on one chart, the date line right down the middle, okay? 0 degrees, which is there or there, would be like over going through England and let's say Western Africa, that sort of area. But we're interested in the Kelvin wave generation area because that's what sets the pattern for the entire planet. So it starts in the far West Pacific, about 135 east, right there. Just go right up the chart, and ends at about 170 west, right there. Blues are easterly anomalies, indicative of the inactive phase of the MJO. Here's where this is past what's been happening. You can see east anomalies, east anomalies, east anomalies. That's a classic, at a minimum, inactive phase of the MJO pattern, but this also is typical of La Nina. What's the forecast for the next week? East, east, east over the dateline. Little pocket of westerlies, but nothing really. So still sort of suggests La Nina and the inactive phase in control. All right, let's look out 2 weeks. Now what we're looking at is outgoing long wave radiation. Remember I said the MJO is, the active phase acts like low pressure? Well, low pressure, of course, makes clouds. And so what this is doing is effectively trying to model the whether there's more clouds or less clouds than normal, outgoing long wave radiation, whether the sunlight can get through the atmosphere, bounce off the ocean surface and reflect back. The blues mean less reflectivity back, meaning more clouds, meaning the active phase of the MJO. So where are we here? Here's the equator right there. That is South America, Central America, Mexico, Hawaii, New Guinea, Australia, the Philippines. Kelvin wave generation area from 135 east, so there, to 170 west. 5 degrees north and south of the equator, so a box in your mind right in there. Active phase of the MJO is over the Kelvin wave generation area. Well, wait a minute. Weren't we just saying that there are easterly anomalies and, it looks like the inactive phase? Yes. Well, what this is saying is that though the active phase is over the Kelvin wave generation area, it is not really having any effect at all on either the winds or anything in this area because La Nina is in control, and the La Nina signal is stronger than the active phase signal, and it's basically just stomping on it. And though it's there, it's making it seem like it isn't there at all. And the forecast for 5 days from now, same thing. This per the statistic model, 10 days, same deal. And 2 weeks from now, well, the active phase weakening a little bit. So not really any hope there. The dynamic model, the GEFS model, pretty much saying the same thing, but the active phase may be sliding off to the east a little bit more while the inactive phase builds and tries to move into the West Pacific. Notice that the statistic model doesn't really show anything of this inactive phase building. Where's Bali? Down there somewhere. And that's India there. Whereas it's pretty strong on the GFS signal. Either way, none of this seems to be of any particularly good news for us. The next companion set of charts, the phase diagrams for the statistic model and the dynamic model. All this does is drill in a little bit more so you can see how strong things are or how weak they are. So the MJO, active and inactive phase, move from west to east, from the West Pacific, over the Atlantic, over the Indian Ocean, over the maritime continent like Bali, back to the West Pacific, around the globe from west to east. Where the heavy dot is, right there is where the active phase is. So somewhere between Bali and the West Pacific. Okay, let's say the date line. But the closer the dot is to this circle, the weaker it is. So a very, very weak active phase. And the forecast is these three just little lines here. They suggest that the active phase is to, meander around, maybe make it into the Atlantic at best, and very weak and of no interest, really. Okay, that's the statistic model. Dynamic model says pretty much the same thing. Very weak active phase, slowly over the next 2 weeks, moving to the far East Atlantic, almost over North Africa, and that's where it'll be. So, no real hope here. The 40-day upper level model. So there is some hope here, not so much from a surf standpoint, but from a precipitation standpoint. So, same deal. The greens are the active phase, areas favorable for precipitation, cloudy. The reds, yellows, whatever you want to call that, oranges, not favorable for precipitation. Okay, and that's South America, Central America. The equator is right there. New Guinea there, Australia, Philippines, Kelvin wave generation area right here. So the active phase over the Kelvin wave generation area, not doing a whole lot, we think, for storm production. But remember, we also said when the active phase moves south of California, and that, if you watch this chart, you see the active phase making its way across the Pacific. It's supposed to be south of California, somewhere around here. Was that March 15th? So maybe that would be a window for the week or two right around in here that maybe California could get some rain. At least the MJO would be supportive of it. And then after that, inactive phase moves over the West Pacific, makes its way across the Pacific into early April, April 9th or something like that. So even less support for storm development than we have today. And as you get into early April, probably no support for rain. So this is probably going to be our last shot for the season. We'll get what we get. Now, we talked about maybe some rain for later this week, somewhere in this time frame. So that, if that pattern could hold for, as the active phase moves south of California, that would be a good thing. And we're kind of hoping for it. We don't think that it's going to be a gully wash or anything, but just some steady precipitation, anything would be welcome. All right, let's go out a little further. This is a month-long forecast. The whole plan on one chart. Date line runs right up the middle. Kelvin wave generation area starts here and goes to over about here. Of course, we have the blues, again, easterly anomalies forecast. All right, so the solid contour, black contour, that's the active phase of the MJO. Very weak indeed. You can see there was one that sort of traversed here. You can kind of almost see it connecting here. Extremely weak, having literally no effect on the winds in the Kelvin wave generation area. The dotted contour, inactive phased forecast, moving into the Kelvin wave generation area the end of March into April. And that, you can see, only helps to enhance the trade winds, east anomalies. So no real hope here either. All right, and then the 3-month CFS model. Now, there's some interesting stuff going on here. Let's orient ourselves again. Date line running right up the middle of the image here. Kelvin wave generation here starts about here, 135 east, goes right up here, over to about here. Past performance is down here. East anomalies, this big bout of east anomalies back in November, December, January. Notice, once we got into late January, we got the yellows showing up, westerly anomalies. Here's where we are today. And just eyeballing this forward, yes, easterly anomalies are forecast, but you sort of look at what's going on here. The trend is the easterly anomalies have held through winter, and they're supposed to start forecast moving over to the East Pacific. 120 west, that is south of California as we get into May. And also notice this suggestion of a building westerly wind anomaly pattern over the date line. That's exactly what we want. Now, it's not going to do anything for this winter, but it maybe, hopefully, suggests the demise of La Nina and the emergence of at least a normal wind pattern over the Pacific, and that could help us for next fall. All right, so let's overlay the MJO right here. All right, so the solid red contours of the active phase. Here's the inactive phase that we're supposedly in right now. A extremely weak active phase forecast somewhere in March, going back to inactive. But even as we go inactive, westerly anomalies start building. And then, so this model has been flopping around it. Some of it, this version shows a legit active phase, maybe moving into the Kelvin wave generation area in May. Other runs have shown it maybe a little bit before that in late April. So a big question mark kind of here. But again, the good news is perhaps a hint of a normal pattern setting up. Low pass filter. This is the all important part. All right. So this is the La Nina signal. The dotted contour here. This is a high pressure bias. Notice it's set right on the date line. It's the hallmark of La Nina. 1, 2, 3, 4 contour lines. But notice the fourth contour line fades in March. The third contour line fades in late April. The second contour line maybe in May. And then also notice this. This is the low pressure bias. This is like just a permanent low pressure. This is like a permanent high pressure. It's over the Indian Ocean today. It was 2 contour lines. Now it's down to 1. And notice it sort of collapses here in April. And the model has been consistently showing this. And also notice this, that it starts venturing off to the west. And it almost is, the leading edge is almost on the date line. I don't know that, I can't pull this down even enough, but I've done it. It's about 175 east, 180. If this can actually happen, again, it won't do anything for this year, but it might set, so once it starts, once this low pressure bias can get a good coverage over the Kelvin wave generation area, then 3 to 4 months after that, the entire global circulation will start to respond and understand, feel what's going on here, and maybe we'll return to a normal circulation pattern. That's one thought. Another component of this model is not that favorable, so we'll have to, we'll get into that in a second. And with that, let's move past the MJO discussion and get into the La Nina El Nino discussion. We start off by looking at subsurface sea temperatures down in the ocean. This is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here. These are the anchor lines on the TAO buoy array, a series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino. The X's, the actual sensors on the anchor lines. The data is collected, sent to a central processing facility. A model is applied, fills in the gaps, and gives you a sense of what ocean temperatures are doing. Okay? The 28 degree isotherm, 28 degrees centigrade, that's pretty warm water, is in the far West Pacific. Okay, and you notice the 24 degree isotherm, this other heavy line, pretty skinny over in the East Pacific, but it's way better than it was. It wasn't even there a couple of weeks ago. So some warm water is starting to build on the surface. What we think is happening is trades are weakening here, and so it's not like this water is migrating from the West Pacific to the East. It's more like trades are weakening, upwelling is diminished. The sun can start get a small area here starting to warm, and so at least a sense of something trying to move towards normalcy. Now, but it is the differences from normal that really count, the temperature difference from normal. And what we see is 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees above normal warm water, all balled up in the West Pacific. 3 degrees below normal in the East Pacific. This is classic La Nina sort of thing. The trades are nuking, right? They cause upwelling in the East Pacific. They cause temperatures to drop here. They take all the warm water that was here over months, mash it all over into the far West Pacific, and they just act like a brick wall. As long as the East trades are blowing stronger than normal, especially in the Kelvin wave generation area, the warm water just gets stuck here. Now, the interesting thing is, see this line right here, where the dividing line between the cold and the warm water? It is at says about 150. 150 is right there. We'll say 155 west. Okay. That it was a week ago at 165 west. So this model suggests warm water is trying to migrate a little bit off to the east. That suggests that trades are backing off some. That suggests that maybe La Nina is weakening some. Then there's another model here, a Geodas model, and it is kind of saying the same thing. It runs about a week behind, but now it's saying, no, still about 165 west is the dividing line, but still shows some weakening of the cooler temperatures here, a little bit of buildup of warm temperatures here. But again, this is a week behind. This is February 22nd, where this is, February 28th data. So we'll see if this guy wakes up and senses what's going on. Next week, of course. Now, this is sea level anomalies, not temperatures. This is the height of the ocean, all right? Jason 3 satellite, you strip out all the wave heights, the wind wave heights, the tides. And what we're trying to see is the ocean higher than or lower than normal compared to its spherical normal state. And we see consistently minus 10 centimeters, minus 5 centimeters below normal. Oh, and this is Peru here, Chile down here. That's the Galapagos there. Central America, Mexico, Hawaii there, Dateline there, Equator there, New Guinea right there. But the thing to notice here is almost normal heights developing along Ecuador, off of Peru, pockets now showing up all along in this area. It's really only 5 degrees north and south of the equator that we're interested in. And there was a big pocket of negative 15 centimeter anomalies here. That's all gone. See, it sort of split up and is there. Suggests that maybe, again, trades are weakening. And also notice this, I just noticed this, little bump here pushing off to the east. Certainly not a Kelvin wave. And you can see the warm water, it's like bowed because there's just this constant barrage, like a fire hose of cold water coming this way, and it finally hits the warm water and then gets deflected off north and south. But something's making a little headway here. So another maybe hint of a good sign. Upper ocean heat anomalies, temperatures basically. East Pacific here, West Pacific here, time running down the side. So last April was when La Nina started. You can see in the blues are colder than normal temperatures. And this goes down, 300 meters, I believe it is. And so a big pocket of cool water showed up. Trades were nuking. It pushed all the warm water, and there wasn't much west. You notice the constant buildup of warm water here in the West Pacific as the months have ticked off and the trades have continued to blow. Strongest in right around Halloween. But here's the interesting part. Now notice this. Cool water is retreating. Warm water making a little bit of progress. Now, it sort of happened here too. But this, at least at the moment, is the biggest progression eastward so far since this event got started. This is not a trend. I mean, this could easily be reversed, but it is perhaps a step in the right direction, or maybe it's just a seasonal thing. We're not sure, but we're keeping our eyes on it. All right, let's go to the surface and see what's going on there. Clearly, not a lot of change from what we've been seeing. There's Peru here. I'm sorry, Chile there, Peru there, Ecuador there, Central America, Mexico. You get the idea. Hawaii there. The blues, colder than normal water temperatures, and you go, yeah, lots of cold water on the equator, and there is. But the things to notice is off of Chile, this area, which has been here for all fall and winter, is much, much warmer than it was, which is a good sign. The other change this week, though, is this area of cold water here has built a lot more than it was a week ago and more than it was 2 weeks, suggesting that we've actually kind of lost some ground in this area from, I'll say, south of California out to south of Hawaii. It's gotten colder, but we also have a steady area of warming trying to get a toe in the door here around the Galapagos, off of Ecuador, building some off of Central America. So little bit of a battle going on here between La Nina and the trades wanting to continue to blow, but also fading maybe over here in the far East Pacific, allowing some warming to get a foothold. And if that gets more established, eventually this warm water will start sliding off to the west a little bit. And that's what we want to see. The more buildup here of warm water, the better for us. The trend for the past 7 days, well, not a whole lot of a trend. I mean, the weakest of weakest warming off of Peru, the weakest of weakest warming off of Central America, but there's this thin little blue bit in here. That's cooling water temperatures, only a 7-day trend. We did see some significant warming in here a couple of weeks ago, and we've seen multiple bouts of this where it kind of warms up, and then it collapses and cools a little, and then it'll warm up again, collapse and cool. But, you know, anything we can get in warming here is better than where we were, where it was just a steady cooling phase for months. So some sort of equilibrium appears to be setting up. A quick look at the overview again. One other spot. So here's that newly developing cold stream here. The other thing is cooling here along Peru. So the deal is high pressure is down here. It rotates counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere. And you get the sense that there's upwelling here driven by high pressure, upwelling here driven by high pressure. Something's holding it off here, but we don't want to see this cool water pushing over the Galapagos, connecting with this guy, because then that suggests that high pressure is really, it's going to start, it's pulsing, and that there's upwelling, and, you know, a little bit of cooling, okay, but we don't want to see a permanent trend. We definitely don't want to get the sense that this is going to be a 2-year La Nina. Sea surface temperature trend in the Niño 1.2 area. This is the area right there along Ecuador, Peru, the Galapagos. You can see the trend. We were cool in December, January. We started warming. We got pretty warm the end of January, and we held pretty good in February, but just the past, this is each one of these blocks here is a week. The past week, we've slipped a little back down to 0.633, so a little over half a degree below normal. But we want to see this hopefully rise back up into this range. But this is not the official El Nino monitoring region. This is the Nino 3.4 index from the area south of California, 120 west out to 170 west, almost to the date line. Today's value, 0.805, 0.8 of a degree below normal. But the trend, it's been slowly rising. We were up to our peak here, what was that, about a week ago? And now we've been on this little bit of decline. Again, attributable to, where can we find it? Oh, it's way up here. To this guy right here is our suspicion. And then the final indicator. We've talked about what's going on down in the ocean. We've talked about what's going on at the ocean surface. The atmosphere, which sits on top of the ocean, of course, responds in kind to these changes in temperatures. And some of it's, a half a degree, but that makes the difference. Cold water supports high pressure. Warm water, because it evaporates, is lifting air. That's the hallmark of low pressure. All right, so this is the Southern Oscillation Index. Difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti, right? Since Tahiti is in the Pacific and Darwin is over the Indian Ocean, more or less, when the index goes negative, it means lower pressure over Tahiti, and that's what we want. That's good for surf, and that's good for rain and all that. That's the El Nino indicator. The positive index means higher pressure over Tahiti and suppressed rainfall. All right, today's index, minus 5.43. Oh, okay, we're negative, right? And we were a little bit negative here, yes, but still, look at the past month. Just been rock solid, positive values. All right, 30-day average. It's the average of all these 30 days, and it updates every day. It clicks through. Today, 10.99, which is actually not that bad considering we were up in the 15 range, and I think we were up considerably higher than that earlier. So and it's heading down too. We were at 11.47. You can read the data. Anyway, the point being, there we go, 15.24, just a little bit ago. So going down, but is that a trend? Who knows? The 90-day average is, like 2 months ago's worth of data. Today at 14.76, but it too is falling a little bit. It's hard to say. No clear trend at this point suggesting we're at the peak, but we're seeing, looking at the surface temperatures data, I'd say we're probably past our peak. 30-day SOI average graphed out. You can see we were pretty high here in January. Heading downward. Typically, these downward spikes are the active phase of the MJO. The upward spikes are the inactive phase of the MJO. We want to see lots of downward stuff. Clearly, we're still in anywhere above the line is at least the inactive phase of the MJO, if not La Nina territory. We're well into that at 12, something like that. Whereas we were down at minus 15 roughly back in 2019. All right, so we want to see this fall. We certainly don't want to see it go any higher. We're hoping it will, at a minimum, at least stay where it is and hopefully go down. And finally, the official sea surface temperature forecast from the CFS version 2 model for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region, that area, you know, where we saw the blues running right along the equator. All right, there is good news here, all right, but we'll just go through the mechanics. Here's our La Nina back in October, temperatures 1.2 degrees below normal, and then rising temperatures a half degree below normal as of today, we'll say. The forecast, temperatures holding there. When you're at a half a degree below normal, that is like bare minimum La Nina threshold. You know, down here at 1 degree, that's not so much. That's clearly La Nina, but here, barely. Now the forecast, you go, well, it's supposed to go back down to 1 degree below normal in October, right? Well, a week ago, it said 1.5 degrees below normal, and a month ago, it said somewhere down to 2 degrees below normal. So the CFS model is starting, though we're in the spring unpredictability barrier, is starting to get a sense of, maybe we overstated where we were. It's trying to come back. Now, all the other models just about are saying no. We're out of La Nina. We're going to return to normal in this summer time frame. Somewhere, I think it was in July. But this guy's the last holdout. So he's the old curmudgeon of the bunch. Actually, he's probably the newest model of them. But anyway, we are using this worst case scenario. The more he self-corrects or she self-corrects, I don't know what the sex of this model is, the more this model self-corrects towards zero over time, the better we're going to say our confidence that we're moving into a neutral phase come the fall. But for now, we're going to stay, this still looks like a 2-year La Nina. All right, so for right now, we have a gale on the charts, 2 gales actually, and maybe a little bit more behind that, so there is potential for surf. Very north angled. It looks like there's going to be a bunch of wind relative to California and a bunch of strong trades relative to Hawaii, but we'll take whatever surf we can get. Even at the beginning of this season, we said, you know, when it's La Nina, you take waves when you can get them. They might be ugly, it might be choppy, it might be a mess, might be cold, and certainly was cold today in Northern California. I think water temperatures were 49 to 50 degrees. It was not a pleasant day in the water. But you know what? It looks like there might be some surf. There might even be some rain. Not much, but a little bit. And if the models are right and the active phase does move south of California, maybe we'll get some more rain as we get deeper into March. That would be a good thing. But after that, it's pretty much over. And then we have the longer-term outlook. Right now, the La Nina thing kind of looks like it's peaked out. We're hoping it's done with and that it fades completely. Even our most curmudgeon model suggests that, well, it's not going to, even if it's suggesting we're still moving to a 2-year La Nina, but not nearly as strong as it was a couple of weeks ago. And we're hoping as we get deeper into the spring unpredictability barrier, the model will sort itself out come maybe May, something like that, and it'll get in line with the other models and say, hey, we're done. We're returning to a neutral pattern. If that happens, that'd be great. That would just sort of be the icing on the cake, but we're not going to declare that yet. All right, if you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. There's a thumb. Comments always welcome. The algorithms like all the above. So if you have questions, please do. Please post them. We respond. Links to the video are all the data comes from stormsurf.com. Links to the video top every page of the website sometime later this evening. And of course, you can follow along, follow the charts, all that kind of stuff, and then test your knowledge when we do the video again next week. All right, so that's it for this week. We'll do it again next Sunday. Same time, same channel. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and get some waves.